Is the instant reaction. I am joined by James. Thanks so much, James, for coming on. If you haven't done so, please follow AFC James because he knows his stuff. So it's nice to get someone, who knows what they're talking about, James, because usually, don't I, with Alex Rohan and George. How are you getting on anyway?
I'm good. I'm very good, thank you. As we both kind of discussed before the show started, it was a weird game. A game where like the first 30 minutes, if we paused it there and did a post-match reaction, we'd have both been saying, Arsenal are back, we're looking fantastic. Uh Kind of the more the game went on, I was like, oh, we're doing a after this. How are we gonna react? But I think one thing to say is that the players, I'm sure, felt a lot calmer than we did watching because in reality, Chelsea had no chances. So it felt like a weird one, but I think we were pretty much in control for the whole second half, even if it wasn't vintage football from the Arsenal.
Yeah, I think Tipsy's hit the nail on the head here. A win that feels like a loss. Still a win, though. And we're in a weird position as well, aren't we? With like the Premier League, it feels like, not much to play for now. Essentially just keeping players fit, which we'll probably go into in a little bit. Try to keep momentum going into that Real Madrid game. But just in general, like, how do you feel like leading up to that game? I know there's a lot of discourse around the lineup. Any surprises for you? How did you feel?
I was surprised that Marino stayed as number nine, as I'm sure many other people were. Um, it was one of those where it just felt natural that now that we have three attackers available, they would play in the attacking positions. That wasn't to be. Arteta stuck with Marino. And again, Nwaneri's 17. Like we've got to temper our expectations. I personally thought it would have been Trossard in the centre, Martinelli on the left, and Nwaneri on the right. But as I say, it wasn't. It was Marino still up top, who ended up scoring. So this is why Arteta's manager and I'm not. He did score from a set piece, so I'm not sure it was particularly a result of him being up front. But look, he was on the pitch maybe because of that. And again, I thought Martinelli was really good out on the right. So Nwaneri, I guess it sometimes we do need to remember he's 17, and we look at the Owen and the Rooney record, and everyone's saying if he can score one more, then he's up there. But again, the game nowadays is so much more physical than it used to be. Now, Nwaneri is physical for a 17-year-old, but we forget him playing week in, week out. It doesn't hurt too much him being taken out of the limelight. And as much as I wanted that record, I will admit I think Arteta got it right today with Martinelli on the right and with Marino up top. As much of an eyesore it was as well at times.
I mean, yeah, you're 100% on that. I thought it was interesting. I looked at Alex and what he was kind of saying. He was, I don't know if slating is the right word with Martinelli, but he had concerns. He raised concerns about Martinelli, and especially in transition. Like when we had open spaces, Martinelli sometimes doesn't make use of that. Let's be honest. But I thought his crossing was on point today. It's something that's quite underrated. Even with the corner that you mentioned for Marino's goal, the work prior to that from Martinelli to essentially win us that corner was excellent. And that's something that quite often goes under the radar. So it's well worth kind of talking about his performance. I think just in transition, we lack pace. He's one of the few players. For me, I'd love to see him play down the middle. And unfortunately, it looks like he might be injured again. So we'll have to kind of,
Hopefully, yeah,
grin and bear it.
hopefully it's just a knock. But we, yeah, we need him for Madrid. We really do because also even if Saka's fit, I thought Trossard had a really poor game today.
Mm.
I thought there were a few opportunities where he couldn't get the ball out of his feet. I thought in general his play wasn't great. Again, he's been overplayed, so I don't want to dig out these players too much, but just he had quite a few moments that I thought, let's see what you've got. And it just wasn't falling for him. So I don't know what you thought on his performance.
Yeah, I mean, I think we were crying out for someone to make those late box runs. Actually, there are a couple of times where Martinelli had those crosses, came to Trossard, and the ball striking just wasn't there today. It's like
Mhm.
something that I praise him for quite a lot. I think he's one of our clutch players, someone that gets into those central zones. If there was someone that I was kind of looking towards on that, it would be him most of the time, but it
Yeah.
just wasn't coming off for him. I think that was kind of like the storyline of the whole match after that first 30 minutes, which I think we should probably chat about. I think it just dropped off for most players. Nothing seemed to be coming off. But let's kind of go through the entry of the match, that first half an hour. Arsenal seemed to be pressing high. We seemed to be kind of dominating midfield, not letting Chelsea have any chances. Do you think there was like a change in the way that we set up and the way that we attacked the game for the first half an hour? Or do you think it was just the fact that, it was Chelsea away, they're playing away, they haven't had a good record. I think they've got the worst record in the league over the last 7 games now away, which is always nice to
Oh,
hear.
really?
But so yeah, do you think it was more us or more kind of how Chelsea approached the game?
I actually think we approached the game slightly different going into the start of it. I think we really high pressed at the start, and I don't know if Chelsea were trying to like suss that out and made a tactical tweak. I wasn't kind of watching their build up closely enough, but every time in that first half, the way Robert Sanchez kept passing to us, their defenders were on the ropes really. Um, and then I don't know if we tired or I suppose we got the goal, so we thought, right, we can sit off now and play in a different way. But the things definitely changed from about the 30th minute, as you say. And I kind of thought in the second half that we'd come out raring to go again. The fact that we didn't maybe suggests that Arteta did see it as a tactical change and said, right, lads, now that we are ahead, let's take off the gas. The chances will open up, which they kind of did. Um, but yeah, it was weird because I didn't notice anything major difference from them. But the counter press we were doing, uh, we kind of stopped winning the ball so high up the pitch, um, which was again disappointing because kind of felt like 2022-23 Arsenal, where we have a 30-minute blitz and then we go, okay, we can't do
Yeah.
this for 90.
Yeah, and then lo and behold, we're on the instant reaction having to talk about that other 60 minutes, which is always a joy, isn't it? Like, I seem to get a rough end to the deal every time I'm on here. It's always a shocker of a game, I'll be honest. No, I felt the same. There wasn't per se like a moment of the match, a turning point where, Chelsea suddenly changed, because I think in the first 30 minutes, Chelsea didn't have a single touch in the Arsenal box. For I think it's the last 10 minutes of the half, they had 93% of the
Yeah.
possession I was looking at, which is unbelievable. And I think that was more or less like down to us rather than Chelsea kind of turning the tide, or there wasn't like a particular challenge that I saw. Like it was a really interesting one. I think maybe, seeing as I've mentioned about the challenges, we should get into this. I mean, Ivan, thank you very much for the super chat. Kavanagh and Gillett. I'm going to start calling him Gilet today because I can just imagine him sitting in a gilet, just chilling out with his fantasy football on the screen in VAR. Just, I mean, I don't know what's going on. It's bonkers to me. Just let's go to the Cucurella one. Penalty for you, or
Yeah, I think it should have been. And I think that what it was is one of these blind spots that we keep having where the on-field referee doesn't give it and VAR says it's not clear and obvious enough to give. But I don't think the ref had a good angle. And I know that the assistant linesman was right behind him, so he wouldn't have seen it. And also, kind of the way Cucurella went down was in a way that the ref was probably hesitant to give it because he wasn't sure if he got pushed, so he's not going to give the penalty. But VAR watches that back and says he's definitely not been pushed, and it definitely has hit his arm. So look, it feels like had so many of those 50-50 decisions given against us this season. And then today we watch it and just it doesn't go our way. And it's a weird one because I feel like I keep moving the bar when it comes to us. I'm like, oh, maybe it's not a penalty. But if I watch another team, I'm like, oh, they get them. But for us, I'm like, oh, are we expecting too much? I don't know. It feels like I'm going mad, mate.
I know exactly. You try to kind of look at it from a balanced point of view, don't you? I don't want to be the kind of guy that's just whining constantly about rest. But I mean, Fofana, just the amount of persistent fouls, let alone the Declan Rice kind of, was it a stamp? I mean, for me, it looks like, I mean, if you're looking at protecting players, for him to pick up a yellow card for then throwing a ball on the pitch, I just thought was laughable. I mean, what are we really doing here? Like, at the end of the day, what's the most important thing? It's the players. It's the players for the entertainment. It's the players for themselves. It's for the good of the game, really. But again, did he? I mean, he didn't even pick up a booking for that. Like, is that a yellow card? Is that a red card?
That's what I was really, really disappointed about. Is that the idea of? I think the one thing that he got away with is because the ball was underneath Rice, so you could pass it off as if he was going for the ball and Rice was obstructing it. But he definitely got him. He definitely left something in on him. So if VAR says it's not enough to give a red card, I'm thinking you should be able. Everyone on the pitch could see that he's just stamped on him. So why are we not punishing him for that? And then again, it was honestly, I even tweeted this. I said he was playing like he was trying to get sent off for Fafana every single time. He made about 4 yellow card worthy challenges and then still wasn't giving it. So he thought, oh, fuck it, I'll throw the ball onto the pitch. That'll definitely get a yellow card. And the Emirates crowd have a good memory and did not let him get away with that because we said, hey, look, we've had a few go against us this season, worse than just yellows. You're definitely not getting away with that. And then he could have, I can't remember exactly what the challenge was, but he could have been sent and he got away with another one after that.
Yeah. And I think players now from opposition teams are picking up on this because he was almost goading Declan Rice, who I thought, to be fair, I mean, he let that go pretty quickly and just got on with it. A lot of players, I mean, we saw Enzo today. Enzo just constantly going at the linesman and going at the referee and not kind of no reprimand or anything. It was really bizarre. And I think maybe that's from instruction from Arteta. It's a case of, look, we won't get these decisions. You need to just essentially leave it now. But it's interesting that for me, it looks like opposition players are picking up on this and realizing maybe that's the way forward. But that was kind of an underlying theme of the entire match. I think maybe in the second half, that's something that Chelsea were instructed to do as well. Break up play, slow down Arsenal, kind of get these what we usually see from like a Rodri for Man City. He's like the master of it. But you know, unfortunately for us, we get Miles Lewis Skelly getting red cards for it. So it is what it is. In terms of like, let's just go through the big kind of moments then. We had the penalty shout, the goal for Moreno, the Rice stamp. I've then got the Raya, can I call it a save? The David Raya moment. I mean, maybe it's a new technique, but I wasn't impressed by that. I mean, to be honest, Cucurella's strike on that was unbelievable, and that's what we needed from Trossard from that moment from Martinelli's cross. But that's something we don't usually see with David Raya. Yeah, is that something that you've noticed before? Because I mean, I think he's been fantastic this year.
No, that's exactly what I thought. When it happened, I thought there's no way because he has been so reliable all season. And I don't want to bring him up, but we saw Ramsdale. I don't know if you saw the goal he conceded. I thought it was really poor. And it was a bit of a moment of reflection to me to say, like, I'm glad we've stopped conceding those type of goals because Raya is, for us, very reliable ever since Ramsdale parted ways, or ever since the goalkeeper debacle stopped being such a big deal, because the English media were really doing their best every week to stoke the fire with that, which I think was very disruptive. But yeah, really basic save for Raya. Goes to his legs in. Lucky, absolutely lucky boy, because there's absolutely no way it should have gone to the other side of the post. I don't know how he's managed that. But we got away with it, and as I say, I think that's pretty much the only threatening shot I want to say they had all game.
Yeah, I think it is. I mean, I had some stats here earlier. I'll try and find them in a minute. Speaking of stats, I'm going to try.
You got the feed
screen share a minute because Scott Willis he's come out with his stats, but I don't usually use this. So bear with me, everyone in the chat. I do apologize because this could go hideously wrong. You might just end up with my notes in the match here. So I'll try it. Let's see if we can do it. And is it going to let me? It's not going to let me, is it? It's never going to let me. No. James, I'm going to try that again in a minute. While we're chatting, right. I'll save this. I mean, I can put up random thumbnails of the boys, but I can't put up Scott Willis's all of his stats. But let's just kind of talk as a whole then. Anyone in particular that stuck out for you? I know you talked about Martinelli. For me, first half, Odegaard actually looked like he was doing all right. I think he had 3 chances in that first half.
Hmm.
Second half, he looked like a man that just, like sometimes you have those days and you just nothing works. Like there was several incidents. I think maybe in the 85th minute there was a flick he tried to pull off and they ended up having a counter. Some of the weight of his passes didn't look right to me on quick transitions. Even like choice of passes. I mean, he quite
Yeah,
often gets accused of turning away from goal and resetting. But there was one in particular he played out towards the left for Trossard, and I was crying
could have
out
gone
for
to
it to go to the
Nwaneri.
right hand side. I think it was Waneri. Um, is this something that we need to start kind of looking at? Is this something systemic with Odegaard, or is this kind of something that we're just going to make through at the moment? Because I know online there's a lot of talk about even like pulling him out of the team, which I think it might be a little bit harsh. But for you, is this just something that we need to wait and hopefully it will go through?
I wish I knew, and I'm sure the person who's able to solve the Odegaard problem will will be getting a fancy paycheck at the end of the month. Um, it's weird. It's really weird because things like his weight of pass, and I know a lot of people have said, like, "Oh, it was just he was carried by Saka." That's not true. Like, of course, having arguably the best right winger in the world will probably go second at the moment next to you is going to help. And having a 17-year-old or a left winger playing at right wing is going to be detrimental. But we're seeing things from Odegaard that we're just not used to seeing ever. The ball, someone cut the ball to the edge of the box and he like scuffed his shot. We used to
Yeah,
talk about the ozone. That used to be his thing. He scored 15 non-penalty goals in a season, which is as many as any midfielder has in Premier League history. Um, and then yeah, you're right. There was some passes where I can't remember if it was Nwaneri or Odegaard or Martinelli on the right hand side, and he's just like cooked it too far to the right, and you're thinking
yep,
that's so uncharacteristic of you. Like so for so long, you've been reliable. You've always been that guy, and then I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's a psychological thing, if it's an injury thing, and he's because these ankle ligament injuries, from what I hear, can be really difficult to come back from. So physically, he looks still there, but I don't know because I tell you what, I will give him credit for is his application is still top top. He is
yeah.
running more than any other player that game, and this is why the idea of putting Nwaneri there, I just don't think he'd get through the same workload. And it's no shade on Nwaneri. I just think Odegaard does so much pressing and then comes back to the first third. But for whatever reason, in between that, everything's going wrong. I don't know the answer to the Odegaard solution. I like to think that, in my opinion, nothing's going to change this season. We've seen enough of a sample this season to suggest it's going to stay the same. So hopefully next season, whatever he's gone through, whatever he's dealing with, he can put behind him, and hopefully he gets a childminder because clearly is not getting enough sleep at the moment. Um,
I'll be honest. I'm pretty sure Premier League players have got nannies and childminders and things. James, I hate to break it to you, mate, but no. I mean, while we're on that, actually, and talk about like next season. Um, what are your thoughts about the whole Zubimendi deal? Like, have you got kind of some reservations about that? Because for me, I don't feel per se it's the right selection in terms of like for Odegaard. I think maybe for the club it is, and he's like the perfect kind of Jorginho replacement. But in terms of Odegaard, I worry about the kind of spaces he'll be asked to pick up. And we've seen in recent weeks, I think Zinchenko was a prime example. I thought him being able to pick up the ball against PSV, drive forward, and take the shot when necessary, something that at the moment it doesn't seem like it's in his nature. Is that something like you're worried about, or is that me just kind of overthinking
Ye-
things?
No, it makes sense. I feel like a Zubimendi Rice Odegaard midfield is a curious one. I suppose both players can play like Rice and Zubimendi can both kind of play 6-8 hybrid. So there's an air of
Yeah.
unpredictability. Zubimendi can really drop into the first phase. To be honest, though, even r- profile aside, I watched him live versus United the other week. I was at the stadium, and he
Oh,
wasn't awfully impressive. He really didn't stand out as like if I didn't know who he was, I would have not had him stand out as one of the better players on the pitch. And they, in the end, got battered, absolutely battered by
Yeah.
United. Um, what I do think he will really help with, and I haven't really considered how this works with the Odegaard situation, but against mid blocks and low blocks, I think he is something that we're missing. Is he's quite snappy in the challenge, so uh, decent at intercepting, a little bit like Rice in that sense, but obviously nowhere near the physicality. But also he moves the ball quick. So he what I found quite nice was when he did intercept, he made an incisive pass. Which is again against these mid blocks, what we just haven't been doing recently enough. We win the ball back and we just seem to recycle it for ages. Um, so yeah, the Odegaard conundrum's an interesting one. Does it potentially mean that long term we're considering different options? Or are we considering different options in different types of games? Maybe in the bigger games, we'd move away from Odegaard. In easier games, have a really attacking midfield. I'm really not sure. Um, but overall, just a little bit underwhelmed by the player himself. And I saw some Bruno Guimaraes links, and I definitely have him over Zubamendi at the moment.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I don't know if Georgia will agree, but I love Bruno. I love his tenacity just in general, like the way he plays the game. He's so good in terms of like two-way play. I think he
Yeah,
solves a lot of problems, and especially we know our injury woes, but he's a player I think could literally play all three of those positions to like a relatively good standard.
100%.
I mean, as a left eight as well, I think he would be great. He'd be
He's
awesome.
also the most fouled player in the league by a mile, so fits right in at Arsenal, and also it would be decent for us having free kicks every game because again today it's been a while since we scored a set piece. It feels like anyway. So
Yeah,
that
yeah, it has.
Marino looping header felt really satisfying, I will say.
Yeah, it's so since the start of last season, Arsenal scored more corners than any other Premier League team. 27. 11 of those have opened the scoring as well. So, I mean, they have become a vital part. I mean, we haven't seen them recently. One
Mm,
interesting one as well. What you just mentioned about, free kicks as well. Um, there was a direct free kick, and it was really strange seeing Martinelli. Martinelli kind of blocked the view of the keeper, and it was the commentary for me. I mean, it depends who you guys are watching, but they were mentioning that he'd be offside, and it was really interesting how he ran directly out towards a bar line essentially to get out of the keeper's view. And I thought that must be something that we're working on because we are dreadful from direct free kicks. I hate them. I always think, you know what? Let's just pass it back to Raya and reset because this is pointless at this moment
I've
of time.
said this before, and also with the direct free kicks, what annoys me the most is like in the United game. I think it was that game. We're chasing a goal, we're trying to score, and they spend 5 minutes setting up a wall only for Odegaard to hit the wall. And I'm tearing my hair out thinking, guys, just actually pass the ball and get on with the game. It's been, I know people like to cite Saka scored one in the Champions League, which just went through everyone. I want to say it was against PSG, but I can't remember. Um,
It might well be
but
actually.
but before then, it was Odegaard versus Burnley in 2012, and I
Yeah.
think that was sorry, not in 2012, in 2021. That would
That's
have been a
right.
long time
Yeah.
ago. Um, but yeah, it's ridiculous. So that should be top of our transfer priority list. Someone who can hit a damn dead ball because
Just bring them on for that.
honestly,
That'll be
mate,
fine. We'll just do American football style.
absolutely.
I mean, so Gabby, thank you for the super chat here. So Gabby saying the best defense Arsenal played today was letting Chelsea play Maresca ball. They looked more threatening when they transitioned. They miss Palmer. I mean, Palmer's not been in great form, to be fair, but it's something that worries me is the way that we transition. The high press in that first 30 minutes that we were talking about was so like it was enjoyable to watch. It's something that I've missed recently, but it's what we do with the ball after a high turnover because sometimes
Mm,
it seems that we lack the I don't know the knowledge of how to move forward. Even when we've had Saka, Martinelli, Havertz, we haven't looked fluid from that position. Um, One of the nice things today was that Martinelli was actually there to take the ball forward. Now, he didn't make the right choice in every single one, but it was very obvious that that is a big hole in our game. I think, yeah, transitions at the moment, and I envy other teams. I look at Liverpool, and I know that we seem to, I guess, the way we play, we seem to come up against mid blocks and low blocks a lot more. They play a lot more of an open type of style, but we just, it's so frustrating when we get these moments and we don't kind of make use of them. But yeah, it is what it is. Thank you, Gabby.
Do you know what
And
as well?
we seem to have
Because
a.
I
Oh
was
yeah, go on, James.
I was just gonna say the one time that we transitioned so perfectly, if you remember against Spurs, that Havertz ball to Saka, Saka takes
Yeah,
it first time, that we know they're capable of doing it, but they just so often kind of shy away from it. So I don't know if it's a fear, if it's a tactical thing, but we've seen it. The proof's in the pudding. The boys are capable of it. Um, and I hate to say it because I do love Odegaard, but he often is one of the culprits for the players who will get the ball and turn back. And
yeah.
I I don't know if it's a tactical thing because obviously he's Arteta on the pitch, but certainly at times it's so frustrating to watch. You just think, look, if you go forward and lose the ball, fine. We've got the best defense in the world. So this is what frustrates me at times is people act as if we've still got holding in defence and we're trying to, and they need protection. These two centre backs don't need protection. Trust them. And today in the high press, I think we saw that a little bit more often, where we were saying, fine, you can have Gabby and Saliba back. Pedro Neto can try, but they won't get any joy because again, these guys are absolute monsters.
No, and I think we should come on to them in a minute because the two centre backs again were fantastic. I'm going to try before. Thanks, Alex. I'm glad you're tuning in, mate. You could take 5 minutes out of your day over at the Emirates. Lovely to hear from you, mate. I'm going to try to bring this up. Now, this didn't work earlier, James, but I think I've got a workaround. So hopefully we can get
Go on.
Scott Willis's stats up because I think if I bring this up as a background. Hey, there we go. We can't see the shots there, but we can see the rest of the stats.
Hey,
So,
pretty good.
yeah, I mean, tail of it, essentially, we've got a very kind of reasonable amount of possession between each other. The final third entries 61 for Chelsea, 36 for Arsenal, which is considering we dominated that first 30 minutes, is unbelievable. Zone 14 touches again. I mean, just down to 14. Um, it's a bit worrying in terms of how we are entering the box, how we're using our possession. And I'm hoping now field tilt, guys. The field tilt is in. Let's have a little look. There it is. So we have got. Oh, it's a close one, mate. It is a close one. 51%. I don't know if we get many points on this today. 51% to Arsenal, 48.3 to Chelsea. But notice where it is. It's from where we talked about that 35th minute onwards. That's where they start getting chances. Chelsea. They had nothing for us. But we
But
move.
what I want to say on the field tilt as well, and I'm sure Alex would have the same conclusion, is that a lot of their possession, whilst it was in our final third, was still meaningless. And this is why I think what was it the final third entries and the zone 14 touches. They had loads of touches in zone 14, but it was really unthreatening. They were really unthreatening touches. And the reason why they had the final third entries is because they went into midfield and then passed it back to defenders and went back into midfield and passed it back to the defenders. There was a lot of the time, which is why the field tilt for us is higher, yet they have higher possession because a lot of their possession was in defence, which was really frustrating to watch because no one wants to see Fafana, Colwell, these guys just knocking the ball around. But again, I think a lot of it was us being comfortable with discomfort in a way. And
Hmm.
it's a very, very good trait to have as a team that we are able to say, yeah, fine, fine, do that. And we'll chill all day. And we've had games against low and mid blocks where it's felt like we could have played for 3 hours and not scored. Today we were
Yeah.
on the right end of that. We put a low and mid block, and we identified that as something Chelsea couldn't get through, and said, "You're not going to score." And I believe, having played 2 or 3 hours, they wouldn't have scored. They didn't create anything of note apart from a Raya spill through his legs. And to be honest, as we say, the chances they created were through transition, not against our settled block.
Yeah, that's 100%. And to be fair, that's something that we're going to have to be comfortable with coming against Real Madrid. That's essentially that is the blueprint of how we get through those two legs, especially with the players that we're essentially going to have or not have, depending how you want to look at it. Especially with Raheem Sterling being suspended, the great Raheem Sterling. I know Alex will be in the chat thinking, "Oh, we're missing Raz. That's our favorite." But no, I mean, it hasn't been a fantastic day. I think before we kind of finish up, if we quickly go through the team, just general thoughts. So David Raya, we said about the spill, but in general, I think he had a relatively quiet game, like we said. Very little entries into the box threatening, apart from the Cucurella one.
I thought he was quite proactive with the
anything
way
to
he
add on
swept
him?
though.
Do you find that he's playing like higher up the pitch at the moment? Because it seems like over the last what probably since January, he seems to be playing a lot higher up the pitch, especially when I don't know, even like set pieces. He seems to be so much more advanced. But
Yeah, I guess it seems that way. I haven't noticed it specifically, but now you say it, I think, yeah, he does. Especially in when we're building up from defence, he very often finds himself in between the centre backs, which used to be a little bit deeper. Now it seems like he's in
yeah,
between the centre backs, really high up the pitch. Which is again, sometimes I think like bloody hell, boys, if you make the wrong pass, they're gonna just stick the ball into the open net, but they're reliable and it seems to be working as we say. I thought he was did a lot of the things that you wouldn't notice, put out a few fires before they came to light. Because again, Saliba made a little flick on back to the keeper,
yeah.
which if Raya was not right on his toes, then could have been really bad.
Next player, for me, player of the match, Urian Timber. I think we are so lucky that we have a player like Urian Timber who comes off an ACL injury and is able to perform like this again and again and again. We look at like Ben White has been, for me, one of the most consistent right backs, and he's been fantastic overlapping, playing that little like triangle along with Odegaard and Saka. Urian Timber's come into his own recently. For
Yeah.
you, like performance, anything in particular that kind of stood out for you? Is he your man of the match, or am I mental for that?
Yep, I'd have him as man of the match. I think you'd be wrong to suggest any of our attackers were man of the match. And it's just I have so much faith in him that like
Mm.
we are going to need him to defend well against Real Madrid because it is Vinicius, who is arguably one of the best players in the world. But I wouldn't want anyone else at right back to defend against him. He gets so tight to the defender and sorry, to their attacker, and they can never find a solution against him. He wins his headers, he wins his duels. He even in the final third has made a few like tidy turns where he opened up some space, and maybe if for a better decision from Odegaard or Martinelli, they'd have been through. And again, it feels like he's now really into his own at right back. And I think when Saka comes back into the team, it will start to get exciting again because at the start of the season when Saka was fit, Timber wasn't always sure when to go and when to stay. I think now he knows that a lot better. And again, he's only just really become a right back for us. He's traditionally a centre back, which is absolutely mental. What are they feeding these Ajax kids?
I mean, he is probably one of the best, like the most versatile players I've ever seen. Like to be able to play at like left back to the level that he does. I mean, we saw it in the Community Shield against City. Just unbelievable. He's a fantastic player. I don't know what we do kind of moving forward because I love him out on the right, and I think you have to kind of look at it now with Ben White coming back as depending on the situation, we actually have to choose a player for the match and the game state, rather than like a player to start just because of his ability. I think he's both within their own right can start with a club, but they're just unbelievable. The centre backs, I mean, for me, Gabriel was the better of the two. Saliba had some awkward moments. He had some very good moments. I think just Gabriel, the way he stepped into areas today, there were several moments where Miles Lewis-Skelly came inside. You then had players follow him, like Sancho would follow him, Cucurella, and then it would open up gaps because Chelsea seemed to go man for man on the press a lot of the time when they decided to press. And Gabriel just strides into those areas. He was able to make the passes. I do feel like the defense are kind of doing the job of the attackers and the midfielders at the moment. They're we're so lucky. Like, they are unbelievable as a pairing. But who performed better for you, or were they kind of par for par?
I'd agree. I'd say Gabriel, and I think Gabriel kind of all season has been just that little bit better than Saliba, which is no shade to Saliba. But it's just one of those things that I know people find it difficult to adjust their perception on him, but Gabriel is one of the best centre backs in the world, no doubt. And people will still talk about, rival fans mostly will say, "Oh no, he's a bozo." Like, he's not put a single foot wrong this season, and really hasn't for quite some time now. He's incredible, and then add that to the goals that he scores. Genuinely, I'd have him top three centre backs in the world, and again ahead of Saliba at the moment. Um, Honestly, thinking about it, he might end up being our player of the season. Um, because it would have been Saka comfortably, but with the way Gabriel's continued to play, I might have him.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of left-footed centre backs, are there any better? I mean, I don't know. It's a tough call. Oh, have I lost you, James? Are you there? Is it me, chat, or is it James that's freaking out? Can you hear me?
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now?
Yep, I can hear you. Let's move on to Miles quickly. I mean, I talked about him moving inside. That was interesting as well that we didn't really see Calafiori come in. That's something that's kind of been a given recently. I
hmm
quite would have liked Miles to come into the midfield for Partey. I don't think Partey had a great game today. He had flits of the old Partey in the first half, similar to Odegaard, really. But I think for me, his future does lie in midfield. Anything to kind of add? I think it was one of his quieter games today.
I guess that's not always a bad thing. I did think that it was a quiet game for him, but then I at the same time I considered, like, well, that means he's done his job in defence. Now, and I believe I'm right in saying there was one like lung bursting run he did that was really exciting. Um, but yeah, in general, I think the reason why we didn't sub off Lewis Skelly is because he was so reliable, and whoever their right winger was just not getting any joy. So Arteta went, "Fine, we'll leave it this way," which is also testament to his fitness. The fact that he's 18 and able to get through a full 90 without trouble. And I don't know if you saw, Arsenal put a picture of him just the other day on Twitter, and he is built like an absolute bull, this kid. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, I look at Timber a lot as well, and I think he looks like a horrible player to play against. They're not, they're not tall in stature, but they are big lads, like all of our players are now. It
Mm.
must be quite nice being in the tunnel prior to the kickoff and looking across and thinking, yeah, all the players with me, they'll hold their own, which is something that we used to kind of get thrown at us all the time. But no, he is. He really is. Even Ethan's got like quite a stature about him. The way that they're both able to kind of bully players off the ball, even when they seem to be off balance. Some players just go to the floor. We saw it Correa today. They just don't. They're just always on their feet. They're great to watch. Let's do the midfield three as like a triangle. For me, I think the midfield was more or less bypassed at points today.
Yeah.
I keep saying it. The first 30 minutes, they were fantastic. I think Thomas Partey had 4 duels won, the most on the pitch by far. Martin Odegaard, 3 big chances, 3 chances made. There were moments of skill from both those players as well. Like they were able to glide past. There was one where Martin Odegaard did kind of like a Stanley Matthews, hit the ball on one side, run around the other side of the player. It was great to watch. Declan Rice has been in fantastic form as of late. I think he's been the heartbeat of our midfield. He's been the driving force at times, box crashing. For me today, they were in that second half, especially, they were so disappointing at times. The weight of pass, the choice of pass, the urgency on the ball as well. Maybe I'm just being too harsh. Like as a 3, how did they kind of get on for you?
Yeah, my reflections are similar to yours in that I don't know if it was a tactical thing where they were chasing the game because obviously Rice, he was pressing quite high, Odegaard was
Mhm.
pressing quite high, and then Partey had to cover a lot of space. Um, Kind of also, again, some sympathy I have is that these guys have played quite a few games in a row now with little support. So maybe that comes into it. Who knows? We don't know the details, but wasn't their best game? Wasn't their worst game, I guess. It was just reflective a little bit of the game state that a lot
Yeah.
of the game was either us pressing really high, and if they bypassed us, then it ended up being a complete transition, or us playing really deep, and at that point they weren't really they weren't really present because they were just their job was just to screen the defense, which they did effectively. It didn't look impressive, but they did their job. They kind of shifted the opponent's side to side, and Chelsea just gave up.
Yeah, it's like the lateral shuffler, as George likes to talk about. Um, that it was just quite game. It wasn't, remember when we played Newcastle and they kind of ran riot in our midfield at times. It wasn't like a performance like that, but
No.
someone said here, Rice was fine. There were times where he drove forward. I think the pressing when Badia's Shield got the ball, that was obviously the trigger, which is interesting actually for me. Colwill is like his best attribute is his left foot. And to play him in right centre back, I thought that was a big mistake. And Mariska kind of paid for that because then every time that was the trigger, Odegaard moved forward. And when we did press high, it was really, really good. But maybe I'm
Yeah.
just asking for too much. Maybe we're just looking at kind of, get through this game, rest as much as we can, get away without any injuries, and just make the international break essentially. But it is what it is. Martinelli, we kind of talked about. So let's kind of go straight over on the other side with Trossard. Not his best game. Could he have done better with the chances, James?
Um, yes, because like Trossard, and I like footballers to be confident. I like them to back themselves, but he is someone that backs himself, and he is someone that gets frustrated when he's not starting. And but the problem is, he's now he's had a lot of time to prove himself, and he hasn't really stamped his mark on this team. So again, he's someone who's played a lot of games in a row, but I really felt like this was his time when the attack was so depleted, when we had Marino and Nwaneri. You've got to think the full Belgian international, the guy who we spent 30 million on, and in previous years has been very reliable. Just this season feels like it's petering out, and I think
Yeah.
maybe he could have earned himself a new contract with really good performances. But I think based on what we've seen during this period, I wouldn't extend his contract. I think we should probably try and cash in as long as there's a reasonable offer. Um, because I'm watching Nico Williams play unbelievably during the week. I'm watching Semenyo play well. I'm watching all of these guys play well. And then with all due respect to Trossard, I'm thinking w- with the standards we've set at this football club, I shouldn't be happy with this. I shouldn't say, "Oh, you tried," because yes, he had some chances that he could have done a bit better on. But apart from that, if he doesn't score, Trossard doesn't really impact the game. That's the problem, and he didn't today.
Yeah. Out of those players you mentioned, so let's just say Nico Williams, Semenyo, Barcola.
Hmm.
If you're ranking them for our transfers this summer, what order are you putting them in?
I'd have Nico Williams top, Barcola second, and Semenyo third. Were they the three? I missed
Yeah,
if you
yeah, yeah.
said one more.
Ah,
But there's one
interesting.
more. I'm thinking there's one more player that we haven't included. I'm sure there's another. I don't
Is
know
it
if
a
it's Leao
Lookman or
or
a
Lookman,
Leao?
but George loves Leao, but that's not happening, especially if we get Isak. But we'll
No, I
see.
mean, I just find out of possession. I don't know if Leao suits us. We need someone, whoever it is got. We've just got to get someone in. I don't care if it was any of them. I'd be over the moon. Let's be honest. Let's kind of wrap it up then with Mikel Moreno, our our answer to our prayers, the savior. I mean, he comes up with the goods. He even, to be fair to him, there was a moment he had a kind of side-footed volley, and Sanchez pulled off a good save. It was like right on the
Mm,
line. In general of his performance was, did he deserve a goal? Does he deserve some plaudits? Because to me, I think he's quite quiet. I think maybe was it 5 touches he had in the first half? That was it.
really.
So even like linking up play, sometimes we play over, we go to playing over the press. I don't think he really was the person to, to do that today. We didn't really need him. How did you find his performance? Was it just like a standard 5, standard 6 performance, or do you expect
Yeah, so
more from him?
I can't expect more from
Can
him.
you expect more from him if he's got a goal? I mean,
he's a midfielder, and not even like he's not a Florian Wirtz midfielder. He's a
mhm.
centre midfielder, Fellaini type midfielder at best. The problem is he just seems to chase the game when he's up front, and I kind of see why Arteta likes him there, because he does take his chances. He is quite clinical when he gets the moments. Uh, but the problem is, again, the press is tough to watch. He made one really good challenge actually, which I think put Odegaard through, and he lost the ball, but he
Oh
made
yeah,
a, he
yeah, yeah.
very, made a very nice press.
There we go. Perfect performance then. Mikel Moreno to the rescue. Thank you so much for coming on, James. Like genuinely, when I have no co-host, no one to rely on, you come in with the goods, mate. It's been a pleasure as well, because there's so many times I've wanted to have a chat with you, and it's the first time I actually get to. So it's been great. Hopefully we can get you on again. Can we get you on again?
Of course, it's been a pleasure. As I say, I've been wanting to come on for ages. I've been promising Alex for ages. So to finally be on, and finally and I love the instant reaction feel about it. Just the debrief, the letting off steam, and it was a weird one after today's game, as we said. But
Mm,
I'm very happy, and a pleasure to be on the Cannon podcast. Of course.
thanks very much, mate. Thank you all for watching, and thanks for keeping it Arsenal. Cheers now, guys.